Alright, hello and welcome. My name is Guru Pathik, and today we're going to do a replay review of a 3.2K Earthshaker. And he submitted this replay to me through my replay Dota replay Reddit post, I guess. And he said, hey, could you review this replay for me? It's a 3.2K average MMR game. I played as a roaming Earthshaker. I want to improve as a roaming support and Dota in general and be more efficient. Our early to mid game went fine, but they had a Medusa for late game, and we just lost to the Medusa and Mirana who were farmed. I would also like you to comment on SF's item choices. I've watched all your videos and your YouTube, and it's helping me a lot. Thanks in advance for the review. Really nice words. Thanks a lot for watching my videos. I appreciate it. We'll check out this video. I'll comment on SF's items as well, but I'm going to focus mostly on your play, because I want you to learn from your mistakes and not focus on the others around you, because that's really how you get better, especially with solo MMR and just Dota in general. So you picked roaming Earthshaker, and a roaming hero is a pretty interesting hero to play because you kind of want to be everywhere, but you can only be at one place at a time. And what that means is that you got to be really good about your efficiency. So you bought 2 tangos, you pulled 2 tangos to your mid, which is good. The GG branches give a little bit of extra mana pool for Earthshaker and 1 clarity. What are you saving the gold for? I don't know. So before we get started, the things you want to focus on as a support player is, like, the first thing you want to do, especially as a roaming support, is gather information, right? Which is, you want to look at all the lanes that you're potentially roaming to, and you want to see, like, where can I be most effective if I roam to that lane, or where can I essentially get a kill, or where can I secure free farm, that kind of thing. So if we're looking at the lanes, right, you've got SF mid, which is pretty clear, and it looks like off-lane Legion, maybe jungle Legion with a safe lane Alk, and you've got CM who's supporting as well. So you have, like, kind of a pretty typical lineup. I have no idea who you're sending to the offlane if Legion doesn't go there, but you could potentially be the offlaner. We'll see who goes down there at the start. But they have a Medusa who's likely to be safe lane, mid Pudge, maybe offlane Pudge, maybe mid Potom, offlane Potom. One of those two. Tusk is also likely roaming, and then Disruptor's probably going to be supporting the Medusa bottom. So we'll kind of see how the lanes shake out, because in terms of targets, like, you're able to kill the Pudge pretty easily with the help of, like, 1 or 2 other heroes, but maybe killing the Mirana is a little bit more difficult. Maybe you don't want to gank that lane for that reason. So you kind of have to adjust to what you see in the game. What's nice about playing roaming supports, though, is that they focus on pretty much the most important resource of Dota, which is time. And that means, you know, in Dota, you have to be as efficient as possible, and that doesn't always mean farming creeps or hitting towers or that kind of thing. It's that you don't want to have gaps in your movement where you're just running back and forth between places. In terms of your starting item build, as a roaming Earthshaker, I'd like to see you have a couple more clarities, maybe 2 or 3. The GG branches are fine, because what they allow you to do is they allow you to fissure twice, essentially, and then pop a clarity, rather than only fissuring once. So this is good. Sometimes it's better to get 3 GG branches, because then you have 250, but you can wait, essentially, for the regen to come up to get a fissure. So this is fine, but maybe 1 more clarity. You might be saving gold for boots or, like, a soul ring. Soul ring's kind of what I like to go on a roaming Earthshaker. It's a bit cheaper than arcane boots, and it allows you to spam your fissure, essentially. So start the game. You guys can test the top rune. Tusk is there. Tusk grabs the rune. So it's a nice fissure block by you. And you guys end up getting first blood. Now, this is something about this fight that is okay. If you want to secure the rune, Oftentimes, one of the best way to secure the runes, is especially as a stunner, is to just stun right as the rune spawns. which is what he could have done too. He could have snowballed if you like started to stun kind of thing. So it's a little bit tricky versus a Tusk, for example. But that's how like a Spirit Breaker steals the rune, is he charges and the stun lands right at 0 seconds, and then he just takes the rune and walks off. Just something to think about. I would have considered stunning at this point. Your stun ends up being really good because it ends up fissure blocking the Tusk. So you use the fissure for 2 reasons rather than just 1. And SF goes raise first, which is really good because it allows you to get that kill. I don't think you would have gotten it had you not had the raises. So like at this point, because you purchased the 2 GG branches, you already have enough mana for fissure without needing Clarity. So that's nice. And like here, you've sent no one to the off lane. It looks like Alk's going off lane because Legion is going safe. It's a bit weird. So this is an example of kind of like wasted movement by you. And sometimes in Dota we just feel the need to click and move. Because I don't know what's going through your head right now, but like if you're here to support the SF in his farm, right, you don't need to roam that far. You can just sit here and wait. If you're trying to kill these guys down here, maybe, like it's hard for me to read your mind exactly as to what you're thinking. If you're trying to kill these guys, then you're a solo Earthshaker. If you're trying to run down here to get farm or experience because there's no hero here, then that's one thing. But what you're accomplishing right now is you're just running so far away from the lane that if Shadow Fiend gets gone on, you won't be there to help him. Whereas if you're here and you're just waiting and you're observing the map, then you're in position to help Shadow Fiend while taking in information from other lanes, rather than just kind of like moving around for no reason. And Shadow Fiend ends up dying here, which isn't your fault. That's not like your fault that he dies to the Pudge. But had you been there, it would have been a kill kind of thing. So this is just you being out of position. And, you know, it's okay if you're out of position to save, let's say, Shadow Fiend, but you're in position to defend the top lane, or you're like getting into position for here. But this movement is just in general wasted, right? Like as a support, especially in the mid lane, this is like really popular in pro games right now too, but they usually do it with a range support. They start the game sort of on the other hero's cliff, so they would start like here, pretty much here if you're dire, to like annoy him this way, because it's really hard to annoy him this way, and you're pretty susceptible to being ganked by the safe lane tri lane. And if you're Radiant, you're pretty much up here and you're harassing this way. You can also do it from this way, but it's a little bit harder. So it's mostly you're standing up here, annoying them while your mid farms a bit. And then you come back and you stack this camp around 1 minute. And then you kind of come back and you either sit behind mid or you rotate top and make a gank that way. That's like kind of the opening that you're looking for. Earthshaker, you can't really do that zoning thing. So, you know, you help with the rune and you stick around your lane for a little bit, and then maybe you go stack it 1 minute. It's just something to think about. But Shadow Fiend kind of ends up dying here just because you're out of position a little bit. And you're sort of, you know, you're indecisive about what you need to do. And when you're indecisive, because that's going to happen a lot in Dota, right? CM kind of does the same thing. She just kind of like runs down here. When you're indecisive in Dota, especially as a roaming support, rather than running around, just stay in a good position and think about it, right? Give yourself time to think, rather than running into a bad position and then having to react to something that happens on the map. So like here, you took experience mid, which is fine because SF was dead. The wave's pushing into him, and so there's not much you can do for this lane. And like at this point, he's going to be farming under the tower for 10 to 15 seconds, and I would be thinking about, like, can I roam top? Like, what's happening in the top lane? Can I do something there? Because what you have up here is you've got Tusk and Medusa, who are up against this Legion. And so maybe there's not a very good kill potential for you down here. And then down in this lane, you've got an Alk who's trying to rush Midas with Grievel's Greed versus 2 heroes. And meanwhile, your CM is dead. She just died bottom. So, like, there's not much kill potential if you roam here, and there's not much kill potential if you roam here. And so, as a support, you have to be thinking, like, where am I most effective right now? And the answer is there's not really a good answer for a place for you to go. You can try to go help this lane if you want to. You can try to go stack if you want to, but unfortunately the clock's not at a very good time. So in a lot of ways, like this next 40 seconds, because there's no real clear thing for you to be doing right now, you're probably just going to waste. And that's not supports are most effective in that first 2 minutes of the game, and so you really want to try to be effective now. So now you're hanging out, and you see how your wave is now pushing here? Like now would be a good time to try and go fissure him. One thing to understand about ganking the mid lane, especially as sort of a roaming support, is understanding their range of vision. So we're going to go back and we're going to watch this from Pudge's vision. We'll go player perspective, Pudge, and we'll do fog the radiant. So like during the daytime he can see up this hill because of his tower, right? But during the nighttime he can't see up this hill. And so like you're giving away that your position is there. And a lot of times as a roaming support you don't want to be giving away your position. You kind of want to like be in the fog, right? Because when you're in the fog, especially as an Earthshaker, like this lane is worried about you. Like the top lane will be worried about an Earthshaker showing up to fissure. Whereas if you show yourself there, like for the next 20 seconds, this lane doesn't have to worry. And they're playing really aggressively, which is where you can sort of take advantage of that lane. But that's just something to keep in mind. When it's nighttime and like Pudge walks down this hill, you can actually walk down this hill and he won't be able to see you in time. Like the tower C is basically out to here. So even when he's like down here and he has no creeps on this hill, you can actually sneak behind him and like get a fissure block this way. It's just something to think about. So here you end up securing the rune. I gotta switch the fog back. Fog both teams. And that's okay. Here like your options are secure the rune or stack. And if Pudge is not going to contest the rune, then maybe you move to stack. You won't be able to necessarily stack both creep camps, or even the big camp maybe. Maybe you're just able to stack this one. But it's just something to do in terms of anticipating their movements. You've also got CM Mora now, which means you're going to want to be spamming. And maybe that's why you didn't get as many clarities. Did you buy something off the courier? So one thing to think about when you're buying items off the courier is that your mid usually needs the courier for something. And like right now, your mid has a bottle. And like your boots are really nice. They're really helpful for you. But if you had just waited for SF to finish farming his bottle and just put your boots on the courier, and when the courier comes out to mid, then you grab your boots as well, then you're more efficient as a team. Whereas this SF's going to have to wait 15 seconds longer for his bottle, which means he may die, he may not have enough regen, he may not have enough mana, those kinds of things. I really think the courier is something that you're going to let mid have, sort of, for the first 3 to 4 minutes, especially before it's crowed. So here you look top, and then you go to stack. So this is good. So besides your first kill at the top rune, you really haven't accomplished much yet. And it's difficult to always accomplish something as a roaming support, but you generally want to do a little bit more than this. Okay. Now this is something that we sort of know based on what's going on with the game. But you have to make inferences based on what you think about the state of the game. We can see that there's a ward here, but the character of this lane thus far is that they've been playing hyper aggressive on your top lane. They've basically been really, really aggressive. And when you roam this way and they just retreat with no vision of you guys, maybe he caught a glimpse of you here, it's a pretty dead giveaway that there's some kind of vision over in this area. We know it's right here to be exact, and if we were to look on the map, right, it doesn't block this camp, so you know that. So that's not a reason to think that it's anywhere in this hitbox, which this hitbox is sort of like this tree up to here, up to this tree, like down this way. It's kind of like that. So your ward would have to be somewhere outside of that, but it sees you walking this way. It could also see you here, like this is a ward spot that could be possible, this is a ward spot that could be possible. But what you know is that the path that you took allows them to see you, which is why they're retreating. And as a roaming support, you got to keep in mind where these wards are, because you want to be moving around them. So the next time you gank, rather than ganking in this pattern, you want to be ganking maybe in this pattern, because it gives a different set of vision to them, and this ward, for example, will miss it. Or you want to buy a smoke and just take the same path. It's just something to think about. More ideally, you want to be dewarding. Here you look at mid, you end up getting attacked top. TP? TP's good. So here you're both showing top. And I'd like to see you move to stack. Or move to protect the rune. You could probably get the rune and stack based on the map positions right now, because there's 2 heroes showing here, there's 1 hero showing here, which means that you probably have enough time to stack as well. But if like Pudge is roaming towards the rune, then you probably want to like just go for the rune. But this is like a good like check the minimap, see what's happening kind of thing. And you've already stacked this once, which means you got to be more precise about your stack timing, which is 53 seconds, which you got. Bounty. SF's diving the tower. He gets a kill. So, like, you're wanting to help this Shadow Fiend, and you are in some sense, in the sense that you've stacked and you got like an early kill for him at the 0-minute rune, but there hasn't been much that you've accomplished yet. And like, you want to look at the lanes and you want to say, where can I be effective, right? If SF's going for the rune bottom, then that's fine for you to take experience, especially because you're a little bit underleveled. But like right now, your Legion's doing kind of okay in that top lane, but your Alk is struggling, so maybe you look to this lane and you see what you can do there. Maybe just the presence of an Earthshaker would allow him to farm a little bit better, and maybe keep the bottom and the disruptor down a bit, because they're just kind of teeing off on bottom. It's a little tricky, but so SF goes for the bottom rune. He gets it denied. Like in the first 4.5 minutes, you've cast your fissure once. And with a CM aura, I think you want to just be throwing it out way more often. So what's nice about this right now is that it's during the nighttime, which means that the vision is different. So if we were to look at like Pudge's perspective, you went to stack here and missed. So if we're to look at like the dire perspective, so fog, radiant, and we'll switch to say bottom for example, they can't actually see you up that hill, right? Like they have no vision up that hill. So as an Earthshaker at nighttime, you can actually just hang out like right here. Unless they have a mid ward, they won't be able to see you. And there's no reason to move. You just sit there, right? And when you move, like when you move in the early game, move for a reason, right? Like here, you may be trying to stack the Ancients, but you just don't get there in time. And that's kind of understanding timings of how long it takes you to walk different places. And in the mid lane, if you are a mid hero, like SF for example, on the Radiant side, you can leave at 41 to stack the big camp. You can leave at 43 to stack this camp. And I know that because I'm an SF player, right? As an SF on the dire side, you can leave at 39 to stack this big camp, or 40 to stack this big camp. And those are just kind of movements that you'll understand as you play those heroes more. But looking at the clock, you don't have enough time to stack any camps as a melee hero at this point. So it's kind of a waste to try and run for them, and you would rather just sit here. But this is what I mean. Like, this is kind of unnecessary movement, right? Make all of your movements matter, especially in the early game. Stacking the Ancients is fine. You have people who can clear it, like Alk can clear it as well as SF. SF a little bit later. Legion can clear it a little bit later. But like Alk can clear it fairly early with Acid Spray, and that might be his kind of like comeback mechanic. So maybe if you look at this bottom lane and you say, hey, it's not able to be ganked, then I'm going to help out Alk by stacking his Ancients, or focus on stacking the Ancients, right? As a way for him to come back into the game. So you're not keeping the enemy down by getting kills, but you're helping prop your team up. And there's a difference between the two. But like right now, at 5 minutes, again, we've only seen one fissure come out from you thus far. You get hooked by Pudge. I would just hit him there. Shadow Fiend gets his attacks cancelled. CM shows up, misses a raise. This is something you've got to be careful about as a roaming support, is mids who can kill you. Right? Because you're going to be kind of a low level. And like, Pudge is obviously there in the mid lane, and you might be trying to set something up on him, but you can see how he kind of like roams up to the top. He's probably just sitting on his hill waiting for the next creep wave, which is understandable. And then he just kind of runs into you. So his movement's a little unexplained right now, and you could say maybe he has a ward, maybe he has vision, or he was just kind of like standing there, because he shouldn't have been able to see you making these movements. And if he's hooking you from right here, then he probably has vision. He may not. He may just be like a Pudge who's just like randomly moving that way. But at this point, I think if you get this right click off, he just dies rather than trying to run. What? Alright, well, he's invisible. It ends up getting a kill for your Shadow Fiend, mostly because the CM's in the neighborhood. But most games, that's just a kill for you. Here you TP in. Looks like it didn't work. So you do know the bottle control trick. One thing I like to do as a support most of the time is there's sort of two ways I like to make sure that the bottle actually does refill when I TP in. And one is just dropping a GG branch in base, like just moving it to your stash to make sure that you have an open slot rather than filling the TP slot that's filling. That's like the for sure way of making it work. But that's okay. You guys just didn't click it fast enough. And then the other thing I like doing is just having the mid set the bottle down on the ground so then you pick it up rather than him having to click on you. Nothing you can do there. So, like, what I'm feeling a lot from your roaming Earthshaker thus far is that you want to help your mid laner, but you don't quite know how. And you see this as like a really potent combo, which it is. He can actually see you in there. Nice arrow dodge. But what you're doing right now is you're not really helping your Shadow Fiend, right? You kind of want to show up with your Shadow Fiend when a mid hero is like 3/4 HP. And fissure into double raise and get a kill for him. Like, that's kind of how you want to help him. You also want to help him by stacking, and you want to also help him by helping the other lanes win. Right? Because this Legion has basically been left 1v2. When she has two really good supports that can help her out and basically zone out this lane and give her free farm and sort of mess up this lane top. And like now, if we're like to look at the level discrepancy, we've got 6, 6, 5, 5, 5 on their team, as opposed to 8, 7, 6, 4, 2. And I think I'd rather have this kind of more even distribution than a sort of skewed distribution, because you're putting a lot of pressure on your Shadow Fiend to do a lot this game, based on sort of how the lanes have gone, which is Alk is lost and your top lane is sort of like broken even, which is what I consider a lost lane. And then you've like kind of won your mid lane.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
Like, if you can't accomplish anything as a support in the early game with your rotations, right, as a roaming support, and that happens, there are some games where it's just impossible for you to accomplish those things, just go to the top lane and pull, right? Like, pull so that you get experience because it's best for you. Like, this is how you get your farm. This is your lane, right here and right here. And so learn this pull timing and then get good at pulling this wave into a dying creep wave here. Most of the time when you want to do that, you want to pull sort of this creep as it's at 3/4 or full HP. The last creep is like 3/4 to full HP. That's when you want to be pulling this guy. And that's about the time that you're able to pull for both, right? You want to be maximizing what's good for you if you can't do anything to help your lanes. Or you want to be working together with your CM a little bit better, because you and CM can kill anything, but you obviously have to kill. You obviously have to go and get kills if they can't see you, kind of thing. And you knew that there was a ward here earlier, so maybe when you saw that ward, you grab CM and you say, "Hey, let's smoke and kill top," right? Or, "Hey, let's smoke and kill mid," right? You want your rotations to get kills. And if your rotations aren't getting kills, then you shouldn't be rotating most of the time. Sometimes, like in the first 2 minutes, okay for a rotation to get farm or force a reaction. But most of the time, that's not the case. So here, again, you're going to stack this camp, which is good. SF's going to go back mid. Roaming is really hard because you really have to have an acute understanding of the game. And what I mean by that is you have to basically predict how you expect your opponents to move. And that's really difficult to do. So you stack that camp. So sort of like a summary of what you've done. You got a first blood kill at the 0-minute rune. You've stacked the medium camp twice. You've secured 1 rune top. You've died twice, and you've stacked a medium camp. You're level 3 at 9 minutes. And that's just, I don't think that's enough to justify a roaming support play. Or justify roaming an Earthshaker like this. And it's kind of easy to say from my perspective because I'm looking at the game and how the game sort of finished out. And maybe it didn't turn out exactly like you anticipated. But in that time, you could have been pulling a lot more. You could have sort of benefited your team a lot more by being top, by helping Legion, by getting kills that way. Here you get experience from SF. So now you're level 4, which is pretty good. But again, like, bot's still dying. CM went down there, Alk died. Like, this Potom looks like she's going to be a huge problem. Disruptor's 5-1. Right, you can see that this lane is the problem right now, and you can either go try to help that lane, like I said, like by fissuring, by TPing. Like if you TP there, maybe you can get a kill, but you're not getting any information because you're not looking at the lane. Here, what you did is a nice move. Save your SF, although you might just be dead anyway. Only gets a kill. So you end up getting a 1-for-1 there. So this is like all good movements, right? You stack the camp, you get the rune, save your SF, you get a kill basically for it. And now you're level 5 at 10 minutes. Usually as a support, my goal is to be level 6 at 10 minutes, regardless if I'm the 5 or the 4, just because that's pretty good timing. As a mid hero, you want to be like level 9 about now, and as a carry, you kind of want to be like level 7 or 8. Those are the goals. And this is all fine, you taking experience mid while they're gone. In terms of your item progression, because you have CM Aura, maybe you don't need to go Soul Ring. But when you hit level 10, you're not going to have enough mana to use all of your combos because you just don't have enough GT branches, right? If we do the math, for example, the mana on level 4 fissure, let's say you're level 6, so mana 3 or level 3 fissure is 155 plus 20, so that's 175 plus your ultimate, which is 145. So that's 175 plus 145, which is 320. See how you like just barely have enough mana to cast all your spells? So maybe 2 GG branches is enough. But if you level this up to level 4, you're going to be just over, kind of thing. So most of the time you might want to think about getting just an item that gives you a little bit more of a mana pool.
Radiant's middle tower.
Shadow Fiend gets a tower. Bottom shows up to trying to defend it. And like what you're doing right now is supporting Shadow Fiend as he's pushing aggressively, which is fine, but all of your movements are completely visible to their team because it's the daytime. So if we switch to... Sorry, I have to switch during... I guess your movements aren't visible. Let's switch to player perspective. So yeah, there you are. It might also be because of their ward. But like here, she should be able to see you. And that's kind of why she's spooked. And now like it's obvious that you're in the mid lane sort of thing. Vision's really important when you're roaming. You essentially want to roam without their detection all game, because now this lane can play more aggressively for 30 to 40 seconds because you're not there. But overall, like, your Shadow Fiend's doing really well. So he's kind of like the guy you're relying on this game. Your Legion's doing okay, and your Alk is just really far behind. One thing you can do as an Earthshaker, like here you should have stacked the big camp. Yeah, that's not going to pull. It was a good effort, but you're just kind of like, this is one of those, you're wandering back and forth rather than just standing in the right position, right? Like right here, just come stand here and stop clicking. You don't need to be clicking something, right? You don't need to be clicking to move kind of thing, and maybe you misclicked and it ended up walking you this way while you were paying attention. But just move to a good position and then stay in that good position rather than moving for no reason. Because you end up missing a stack, which is, 300 GPM and or 300 gold for your SF, as well as, a quarter of a level of experience for you.
This'll come in handy.
Here, I wouldn't be afraid to use my fissure just to farm this, because you're going to take so much damage that you're going to need to go back to base. You're not even going to finish it. Looks like you're rushing for a blink. That's okay. A lot of the times as an Earthshaker, like right now, because of your mana pool, I would start leveling Aftershock. In order for Earthshaker to combo all of his spells, he needs level 3 Aftershock. And by combo his spells, I mean he blink echoes, and then fissures, and then enchant totems. And the enemy will be entirely stun locked for that duration. If you have level 4 Enchant Totem, you can actually, or level 4 Aftershock, excuse me, you can use Enchant Totem and attack with the Enchant Totem and then Fissure. You have enough time to do all of that. But before then, you can't attack with the Enchant Totem and stun lock them. So at this point, I might be considering leveling Aftershock. Other items you might be looking to buy at this stage of the game, especially because bottom has Invis, would be like a sentry for the mid lane or wards. Like you've kind of put the wards on CM, and we're looking at the. We'll look at the shop. Like you guys have 2 wards in stock right now. So here you TP top to help, which is good. Your team didn't end up needing you there, but sometimes it's just best to TP that way. You wouldn't have had mana for Fissure, but you did, like, sort of after being there for 4 or 5 seconds, so that's okay. And like here, again, you're showing yourself in lane. Like they can see you. They know what you're doing. They know where you are. Like there's no reason for them to play aggressive on this Shadow Fiend because they know where the Earthshaker is. Like stay out of vision. Unless you're accomplishing something, then go into vision and do something. So here you start farming.
Dire's bottom tower is under
One thing you can do instead of farming this camp is you can actually pull it. Like, I know most people pull waves, or don't pull waves very often outside the laning phase, but it's actually still a very useful tool for farming, even in the late game. As a carry player or as a mid hero, if I'm up in this top lane, I'll often pull. It's also a good way of pushing this tower down in the bottom. If you pull their creep wave, for example, into this creep camp, your creeps are allowed to hit this tower for a little bit longer. But I think what you're feeling right now is you're pretty close to your blink dagger and you want to finish farming it. But here you could have stacked again for your SF, you could have stacked for yourself. Earthshaker is like a pretty decent farmer in the jungle actually with Fissure, because what you can do in the jungle is you can be like farming this camp and fissuring this camp. So if you pull this camp like for here and it's stacked, then you walk up, you fissure this direction, and you basically farm 2 camps. It takes you a little while. Mostly it takes you like 3 fissures. But it's something to think about. Here you get a TP scroll, which is good. This is part of the reason why I advocate getting some sort of like mana regen item. You could have gone Tranquil Soul Ring and then you would just never have to go back to base. But obviously a rushed blink might be a little bit better in this situation. It all kind of depends. It's risk versus reward, right? If you go Tranquil Soul Ring, you can stay on the map and maybe you get a couple of extra kills because you did that. Whereas if you're not necessarily going to get kills and you rush this blink and then you get a huge team fight wipe with the blink, then the blink was the right decision. So when you're buying items, right, all the items that you buy are for a purpose. And if they achieve that purpose, then, well, they're worth it. And if they don't, well, then maybe you should have gone something else. And that's kind of like a 20/20 hindsight kind of thing. So here you finish farming your blink. You're pretty safe to farm here because 2 heroes were showing bottom and 1 was showing top. But it could be a little tricky. Here you pick up your blink, and this is good. You're like instantly TPing. But again, like keeping in track of how much mana you have, because currently right now you can Echo Slam and Fissure, and I think that's all you can do. 315, and you're really close to having Enchant Totem. Here you start maxing Aftershock. Like at this point, I would rather have 3 points in Fissure and 3 points in Aftershock, so I can chain my stuns with the Blink Dagger, and that's just understanding your skill build and then building it for a purpose. Whereas if you'd gone the Soul Ring Tranquils build, for example, maxing Fissure is way better because it does a little bit more damage and it stuns for a little bit longer, and you're not likely to get into melee range, so having the extra point in Aftershock would make no difference. But this is good. You're setting up for a push top. Your whole team's there. Your SF is sort of in the front, and you constantly want to be positioned out of vision but able to blink in an instant. So like this positioning is bad. I would much rather see you like right here. Hold on, you're moving the camera around. Free camera. So when you're sitting right here, you're out of vision for sure. But you're also a second further away than you need to be. You can be right here, and the creeps won't see you, right? Because these trees will block the vision to right here. And you're a second closer to being able to fight if like Potom invised, for example, and they just start going on your SF. You're a quarter of a second or a half second delayed here, as opposed to being much, much quicker here. Right? You've got to be anticipating what can happen. And the things that can happen is this guy could get hooked, which is unlikely based on his positioning. They could show up with a Potom invis, that's the most likely. Or Tusk just instantly snowballs. You can see the arrow, obviously, so Potom's not doing that, but you always want to be positioned as best you can for a fight, especially as an Earthshaker. And like here, I would be positioned like right here, just out of vision. SF gets hooked, and he's probably just dead because like it's too far for your team to engage. You know, you have a blink, but CM does not. Legion has a blink too. So Legion is in a bad position as well right here. But he has to be very conscious of getting hooked, and I would have much rather seen him positioned over here. But he gets hooked and died. And there's not much you can do at this point. mostly because of that hook. It was a good idea, especially because you have pretty good team fight, but if you're pushing 4 into a team with 5 that also has pretty good team fight, to be honest, the Disruptor is pretty good, and Tusk is pretty good, as well as the Potom ult, you're going to have a tough time. So here, they kind of all show top, they kill your CM, and you're just roaming around back here in the tower. Right, this is one of those things, your Shadow Fiend dies, and so you decide to retreat, and I guess CM decides it's safe to try and farm that wave. So that death is sort of on her. But again, you're out of position, right? You're running to do something, and you either run to do that, or you're in position to fight, right? Because right now, what you were doing is you were running to stack. And you didn't stack because you rotated back to try and save a CM that you couldn't get there in time for, because you didn't have a TP, you were out of position essentially for it, and you didn't get the stack off. And that's what I mean by anticipating. Here you're going to get a nice echo. That's really nice. So that's like where a blink pays for itself kind of thing. And this is the first like real contribution you've made to the game outside of stacking and the early first blood. And it's 18 minutes in. And so if we're like looking at the state of the game, right, we obviously can see the net worth here, and Shadow Fiend's pretty farmed. But if we pull up the scoreboard, for example, Pudge has gotten a few kills. He's a little under leveled, and that's kind of to be expected, but your Shadow Fiend is way ahead, and so you kind of just want to stick with him and keep him alive. Best way for doing that, especially against a Pudge, right? Because the easiest way Shadow Fiend dies is exactly what happened at the top lane, where he gets hooked to a position where your team can no longer support him. And the best way to do that, especially when pushing towers, is wards behind towers, because then you know where Pudge is and you know where the hook's coming from. Whereas if you don't know where the hook's coming from, it can be a lot harder to dodge, right? So I want to see you buying more wards, and I want to see you placing wards that help you take objectives, right? Like this ward on the top rune is fine for the early game and for maybe the early mid game. It protects your jungle, so that's kind of nice, but they're not really ganking into your jungle. This ward's not accomplishing anything. Meanwhile, you've been trying to push this tower for 4 or 5 minutes. A ward behind this tower, a ward on this hill, or a ward sort of like basically behind the tower is the one I'm advocating. Would greatly facilitate you guys getting that tower. But that kill essentially allows you to get arcane boots, which is a nice item. And I think at this point with a CM, maybe I would have gone for Staff instead. Like gotten the Staff of Wizardry for the Force Staff. But arcanes are fine too. It's nice for your SF because he likes to burn through mana. And it's nice for your Legion. But again, they have CM aura. So arcane boots are okay. Here they use invis, and you die. I would also like to see you carrying dust or sentries, especially if you're pushing. And these items aren't flashy, right? Like sentries are not flashy, but sentries win games in a lot of situations. You know, or a ward behind their tower would see this kind of gank coming. You see the arrow coming, and like that's a dead giveaway that you should be getting out of there. I don't know why Potom fired that arrow. Is that just a bug? Yeah, that was just a bug. She's not even there. But like this is really bad for your team in general. Legion gets a dual win, so that's okay. But your SF dying is pretty bad. Because he's the most farmed hero, and he's kind of like a gold pinata for their team. Potom has a lot of farm, which is to be expected, right? She has a Deso. Because her lane was owning. And Disruptor has a lot of farm too, because his lane was owning. You have a lot of farm too, mostly because you didn't die very much. And you got a really nice fight with your Echo. So your net worth's pretty good, honestly. Yeah, it's like right up there with Disruptor and Tusk. But it's basically equivalent to these guys having a good game. And I think at this point the game's pretty even, and you guys can still win. But you have to be the aggressors rather than react to them. And I think in this game thus far, like there you buy sentries, and that's mostly like a, hey, they killed us with Moonlight Shadow, so now I'm going to carry sentries, and that's good. Don't make the same mistake twice. But you guys don't have any vision over the map, and it's really hard to play against a team that's really ganky when you don't have vision. And you have all of your core items, so like wards I would be buying off on cooldown, and I would be trying to make things happen. Like, what objectives can we accomplish as a team that would force fights, right? Like currently Medusa ult is on cooldown, though it's a pretty low cooldown. Potom ult is on cooldown, though it's a pretty low cooldown as well. They can fight pretty often. Disruptor ult's down as well, but it's pretty low cooldown and it's probably up. Right? Objectives you're looking for, especially with like an ALK SF team, is Roche, right? You've already taken the mid tier 1, you've already taken this bottom tier 1, and this tower has proved to be pretty difficult for you guys to take. You've basically lost 2 to 3 fights up here trying to take this tower and just haven't gotten it yet. And so you can either keep batting, like ramming your head into the top tower and hope that that works. And most of the time, it's not going to work. You're just going to end up losing the game if you keep taking fights that you're losing. You got to mix it up and do something different. And the way you do that is either by taking a different objective, falling back and farming, grouping up and smoke ganking, getting wards out that actually help you take the objective that you're struggling with, right? Right now the plan is the same plan that's been the same plan for a while now. You drop a sentry thinking it's warded. Maybe you're just worried about Potom ult. Who knows? But you can see on the map, like, they're not in a position to fight you right now. Pudge was just mid. He had just shown to these 2 wards. And the Medusa is bottom. So you know that there's at most 3 heroes here. At this point, especially if your team's going to push that tower, you want to be dropping a sentry. Sort of right here. And again, like, as an Earthshaker, you don't want to be hitting this tower, because you're just going to get arrowed. Right? You are a counter initiation in this game. And if you put yourself in a position like there, where you're out of position essentially, you can lose your team a fight. And that sounds kind of harsh, but that's Dota in a lot of ways, is the positioning. Like if you get picked off before you get your spells off, that's an easy way for them to win the fight. Right? Your role is not hitting towers. Fissured an illusion. Tried to D-ward. You do get the D-ward, so that's nice. But the game is really hard for you guys right now, in the sense that they're sitting back and farming, and eventually they're going to show up with a bottom gank and kill you. And so how do you anticipate that as a support player? And the answer is that there is no real easy answer to doing that. You can either choose to get aggressive on them, which is one of the better ways of dealing with it, because instead of them taking the fight to you guys and you sort of having to be in the right position instantly to counter initiate, you can rather just pick the fights yourselves. And the way you do that is with smokes. The other way you do that is with wards that aren't defensive. So these wards are all defensive, and they're easier to place. That's mostly the reason that people end up with these like defensive wards, and I think you'll get the sense when you play a lot of your games, and this is the kind of sense I get when I play with my like 2-point AK friend, is that in this 20 to 30 minute window, the game becomes extremely stally. Neither team plays aggressive, both teams just farm their jungles, farm their ancients. Maybe somebody takes Roche or thinks about it. Most of the time not. Roche just stays untouched. And it's because supports generally only place these defensive wards on both sides of the map. So they see everything that comes their way, but they see nothing on the other side of the map. So there's no reason for them to play aggressive, just like there's no reason for you guys to play aggressive. Like, buy a smoke, get wards down in aggressive places. Aggressive wards are often the best defensive wards. And that sounds a little bit weird, but if you can see that no one is farming these camps, if no one is farming these camps, then they're likely ganking this top. Or they're likely sitting behind the one guy who's at the top lane. And you know that's a big team fight and a bait, rather than a free kill, if that makes sense. Whereas these wards are just purely defensive in nature, and that's all they offer. You've left that mostly to CM because you're playing the 4-position Earthshaker. But I'd like to see you be a little bit more active. So here you buy a smoke, which is good. But you want your smoke to accomplish multiple things. Not only just getting kills, but you also want to see that your smoke... Are they doing Roche? Is that what that 4-step was? Reborn things? But you want to be placing wards as you go, kind of thing. So not only are you trying to get a kill with the smoke, but you're also increasing your vision in the game. So one shows bottom, so you know something's going on there. You're just kind of chilling with your SF, which is fine. But he's completely safe with his wards unless they smoke into him. So I'd rather see you farming out the jungle or positioning yourself a little bit better. Right? Use your vision. As an Earthshaker, you could be farming. And farm on an Earthshaker is... Farm on a support in general is one of those things where people like kind of frowned upon it. Because, you know, it's supposed to go to the carry. But I think that's an outdated philosophy. So here you smoke. And you just instantly run into a disruptor. So, good smoke. Pudge is sitting up on the hill. Nice. So a couple of things. Before you smoke, you have 4 sentries. It's actually worth just dropping a sentry to make sure you're not in vision when you smoke. Because your smoke's not going to accomplish anything if you're under a ward. So I'd like to see you use that. Also, this is kind of like a time where you may not want to smoke, because it's around when the rune spawns, which means there's likely to be someone out here who's going to come out and grab the rune if they can't see you. So like that's kind of what happens here. So it's not the best time to smoke is what I'm trying to say. But it ends up being okay. CM gets a kill. You kill off 2 heroes, both of their supports. What did CM die to? Oh, Tusk. Big fights breaking out in the jungle. Good fissure block. It ends up being a bad fissure block in the sense that it ends up getting you killed. Alright, so super disjointed fight. That's what's happening. So you blink up here, and you probably didn't need to. It's okay, I guess, but it kind of delays your impact in this fight. And here, because of the way he snowballs, you can obviously know there's some kind of ward up here, because he had no vision of you over here. You sort of are forced to use your ulti, and because you sort of missed the fissure. And bottom does a nice job of finishing you off there. So it's like a bunch of little misplays where you could have played a little bit better, right? Blinking up the hill wasn't entirely necessary. Like your enchant totem didn't actually do any damage to Pudge, I don't think. Sorry, we're gonna watch this a bit faster. So, boom. Your fissure was good. Your enchant totem did nothing. So you blinked up there for no reason. You got stuck up there, so you weren't there with your team at the start of the fight. Because, like, if you fissure this guy right now, he dies instantly. And it's just kind of a misplay by you. Here you walk up this hill and you get snowballed, which is kind of like... That's not your fault. It just lets you know there's a ward in that area. Bottom does a nice job killing you. So a bunch of little mistakes. Nothing like huge, but it all adds up, right? And right now what you're kind of seeing is that there's a lot of physical damage on this Mirana. I mean, she basically 3-shot you. which means you need to start itemizing to sort of survive. As a support, most of the time what you want to do is you want to waste the core's times trying to kill you. And items that allow you to do that are like Force Staff, are like Glimmer Cape, are Yules. It kind of depends on the game. You itemize specifically for those kinds of things, depending on the game. Which is part of the reason why I didn't want you to go to that Arcane Boots earlier. Like, if you'd built the Staff of Wizardry and worked your way towards a Force Staff, then maybe you'd have a Force Staff by now. It's a little tricky because you're wasting a lot of your gold on sentries. Not wasting, it's not a waste, but... like, you've lost a lot of gold from your deaths, essentially, in the early mid-game, and maybe you would have been able to buy that Ring of Regen and work your way towards it. Hook range too short. So you assume there's a ward there based on the hook, but it's actually just because you walked on a straight line away from the creep wave. So I wouldn't have assumed there was a ward there, and I don't think there is. That's just Pudge doing Pudge things. He's making a guess based on your vision, rather than something else. I would not have farmed that, though. That was super dangerous, because they had just shown 2 mid and thrown an arrow at you, so I would not have farmed there, but you got away with it. So you get a smoke, you decide to bait the Legion, you sort of draw on the minimap the direction you want to go. You see yellow on the map, and this is where, like, as a smoke, you kind of want to be communicating with your team, sort of where to go. Follow the courier. It was good. It was a good pickoff. It's like basically the target you wanted to get to. Here you kind of stack your stuns. I'm okay with echoing for one person, but now you don't have it for this fight when you didn't necessarily need to use it. Fissure. Good fissure. Pudge misses his hook. So this is all okay. You kind of waste your ult because just the enchant totem would have been enough. So you don't have it now. God, what was Potom doing there? Leaping into 4 heroes by yourself? It's probably not a good idea. But as a support player, right? You want to make sure that you're cycling through your spells as efficiently as possible. Now, I'm totally down for echo slamming one hero, and maybe you panicked and were just trying to save your CM. And that's okay too, that stuff happens. But as a goal, you want to use spells on heroes where they're most effective. Here, if you just fissured a bit earlier, you might have gotten a kill. But then you're forced to blink in because you weren't in a good position. And then SF gets trapped and they TP in. So, like, Echo would have been really nice to have there. That's my point. And it's okay, sometimes you're going to waste your spells. But, like, if your Echo is on cooldown right now, maybe it's not worth pushing. Right? They're TPing one in. Here, you probably were just out of position. Right? And you can see based on your movements, you kind of just like toggle back and forth here, right? Pick a good position, stand there. Just go here and stand there, right? That's the position you want to be right now, right there. Just go there and stand there and wait for something to happen. You're out of range of AoE, but you're in range to help your team, right? Don't do this like run around, accomplish nothing, move myself out of position, and then have to be a quarter of a second late to the fight. You're probably in range to fissure there. But this is one of those things where your team is now hard committing basically because you blinked in. And if you just say back at this point, like this is a Dusa. Dusa's not going to die to a bunch of right clicks unless SF has like a Daedalus, which he does not. He did not go a damage build. So this blink is, you're basically putting your spells on cooldown to take a hero to half HP. And that's not worth it when their whole team's kind of respawning and going to fight against you. So here the fissure ends up being on the wrong side, which is okay. That happens. You'll get better at fissures as you play more. But if your fissure had been better, maybe you do a little bit more damage to the Dusa before she runs away. But your sort of commitment in that fight forces your team to play more aggressively. Because a lot of players will react to how you play. And like here, this is a triple kill if you have Echo. So again, minor inefficiencies, minor mistakes that add up and end up being big problems, right? You wasted your Echo earlier, you weren't in position to get the fissure off, so then you wasted your blink, so then you couldn't blink in kind of thing, or blink out, couldn't save your SF, you couldn't fissure block him. There's a lot of potential for you to play better around these fights. And it just comes to little sort of decision making that are issues, I guess. Here you start leveling your enchant totem. As a support, you can either choose to level your enchant totem or you can get stats. Really depends on the game. If you're playing against like a heavy magic team, I often will elect to go stats. But if you're playing against like a physical team, then I think it's fine to get the enchant totem because the like 50 HP is probably not going to make that big a difference. You're probably just going to die anyway.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
Here you go back and farm the jungle. Again, instead of fissuring this way, fissure so that you're farming both camps. Here you walk into a hero and you don't know it. And you panic Echo Slam. Like, this is a situation where you panic Echo Slam because you're trying to save your own life. But you could easily just die, buy back, and blink Echo Slam these guys. Right? Like, if Echo Slam isn't accomplish anything, don't use it. Right? Like, that's a solo pudge. He's got extra magic resistance. It's doing nothing. Literally nothing.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
And your team is fighting this kind of like disjointed fight. SF's trying to fight a Dusa, and your team is sort of caught on the top end. And maybe they smoked to catch you. I don't know exactly how they caught you, but the main reason they caught you is you have no vision. Like, none at all. There's nothing on the map.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
And like, I understand that you'd feel the need to buy sentries, but you've purchased, 6 sentries, I guess, 8 sentries this game. Because you place 2 up here, and then you place sort of 2 down here.
Tower is under attack.
But you're not using them to anticipate their movements. You're basically not using them as much as you should be. Like, buy them and use them. Like, a lot of times versus Potom, you can just have dust too, rather than sentries. Although I prefer sentries. But here, because you wasted your Echo Slam, like, they're a little bit safer pushing uphill if they wanted to, because you don't have your spell. Right? You're gonna die in Dota. That's just something that's gonna happen. But don't panic and waste your spells. As you play more, you'll get better at that. Looks like SF gave you his bottle. Yeah, that's nice of him. I missed when that happened. CM's trying to D-ward and probably gonna die for it. That is super sketchy. So, this is fine. Like, wanting to D-ward is fine. But it's about picking the right time to D-ward. When you have no vision of any of their heroes, that is not the time to D-ward, right? That is the time you die. Because when I see a support D-warding, I kill them as a core player. That's my first philosophy. Because they're just easy kills. And so while, like, wanting to D-ward this is a great philosophy, it is not the right time to do it, right? When somebody TPs and starts defending top, or they start ganking bottom or something, that's when you want to try to D-ward it, or be helping your guy bottom. You do not want to be doing it by yourself. Like, you're going to watch CM right-click this 3 times, and if any of them are anywhere near this area, you're essentially going to die. So this is just bad decision-making. And your essentially gets instantly dewarded. Like, there's a ward there now. him when Ags. It's weird. You said you wanted me to comment on SF's item build. I think his item build's been fine. You know, like most of the time when you play with Earthshaker, you'll see a lot of SFs go blink early because fissure and then plus the blink on the SF, he can get triple raises pretty easily and get kills. Because he like long raises, the Earthshaker fissure comes, then he blinks to a position where the short raise and the medium raise hits, and he just gets instant kills. But you know that requires a lot of coordination, and it's not something you'll see until higher MMR games. But that's what I would have considered. But overall, his item build's been fine. Like, he built BKB so he can get his ultimate off. It's okay. Otherwise, Disruptor's going to be a pain for him. As well as, like, Potom Arrow. Sanjin Yasha's fine. Lifesteal, also fine. Like, I don't know what items you wanted him to go. But you felt like his items weren't the best this game. But I think they've been okay. So here you farm mid, which is dangerous with all 5 heroes missing. Disruptor shows, and you're not scared of Disruptor for some reason. Pudge misses his hook. Like, you're just asking to die right now. Like, what they could have done is they could have glimpsed you into a hook. That would have been a really easy kill for them. But they're not comboing their spells properly. Wards and vision. So again, like, the game falls into this. You guys have no wards, but they have wards. And so they get to pick the fight. And when they take the fight on their terms, unless all 5 of you are positioned properly, you're essentially going to lose those fights. And like, vision, vision, vision. I can't stress it enough. It's so important in this stage of the game. Like, CM's trying, but she can't do it all alone. A 4 position does not mean that you don't buy wards. A 4 position means that you sort of defer and you work together with your CM to buy wards. Or sentries or detection. Like, even a gem at this point would be super valuable for you guys. You don't have the defensive items to carry it because you went arcane boots instead. Here you drop a sentry. There's Potom showing bottom, so there's like no reason to drop this sentry. But SF wants to push this tower. I think he's okay too. There are 2 heroes showing bottom, Potom and Medusa. But you have to make sure you're positioned in a good position to help him, right? Like, why did you run back to the secret shop? You didn't buy anything. Like, you got to be staying within blink distance of him. If anything happens, you got to be able to react instantly. And that's good. That's good. That's what you like to see. You see 2 bottom, you push top. But again, like, there's just kind of like a nervous pacing, a need to click something. Like, just stand in the right position, right? Like, instead of here, we're going to watch this again. Switch it to free camera. Go back 10 seconds. Right? Instead of doing that kind of like nervous pacing, right? Just stand in the right position. Just stand there. Wait. Stand here. Wait. Right? Even here, when he goes to initiate, you just start running back for some reason. And then he goes on you and he starts pinging and he's like, why aren't you doing anything? It's, well, because I'm like nervously pacing back and I've ran a quarter of a second away from you, so now I have to run for a quarter of a second rather than being here instantly. It's little things. You know, that quarter of a second may not matter for you getting this kill this time, but it will matter some other time. You know, it did matter mid when you were like nervously pacing, I guess, at 2 minutes. I think it's just kind of like a relic of SF's TPing bottom. You decided to TP bottom too. I think it's just a relic of APM and people thinking that's like the end all be all. Nice fissure. He walks away. He's gonna get hit by the arrow. Nope. He gets glimpsed. And then you end up getting hooked.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
So did you need to use your Echo Slam on the Tusk
Dire's bottom tower is under
top?
attack.
Because if you'd had Echo Slam there, maybe you could turn that fight.
Dire's bottom tower has fallen.
I don't know. I think you needed to use it on that Tusk. But I don't think SF should have fought,
Dire's bottom
or you
tower
should have
is
fought,
under attack.
if you didn't have Echo. It's like really tricky. Like in retrospect, you probably didn't need to Echo Slam the Tusk.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
I mean, your team shouldn't be fighting 3v, whatever, 4 bottom without you and SF.
Tower has fallen.
It's really tough to say. But like those decisions end up losing your racks. I don't know if there's like one thing I can point to in your play that made the biggest difference at this point, but this is kind of like a lot of what happens in games, and especially when you're ahead, this is kind of what you want to have happen, because this is how you get guaranteed wins, which is where you snowball the game to a point where the other team feels like they need to defend, and instead of just waiting and being patient and defending as 5 and like just giving up objectives, right? Like that's the way to play it. You start trying to defend objectives by yourself, right? And then you die by yourself and you get picked off, and then you never fight as 5 ever again. And so if I were these guys, I would just continue pushing objectives as long as one of you is down, because you guys have shown that you're okay with sort of fighting at minimal strength. I mean, they lose their bottom here, so that's kind of a big deal. So maybe they play defensive now. Now you've gotten the Force Staff. You're still holding on to this bottle. This bottle is really not getting much value, and I'd rather see something else in this inventory slot rather than the bottle. Wards, sentries, gem, anything along those lines. Dust. Force Staff's like okay at this point. It's pretty good versus Tusk, and it also like kind of helps your SF. But maybe Glimmer Cape would be a little bit better. Just because there's like nothing in particular for you to force away from. In the earlier game, it would have been nicer because it's like a good mana item for you, but mana's not an issue for you anymore. So you don't necessarily need to go the mana item at this point in the game. But again, like no vision on the map. You guys are waiting, you're reacting to what they're doing rather than doing what your lineup is strong at. Like there, I guess your Force Staff was on cooldown because you used it. And like, what I see is going to happen is because you guys just have no vision, is they're just going to surprise you, pick off 1 or 2 of you, and then you'll kind of lose the game off of that. Tusk just walks up for some reason and gets dueled. You stack your stuns. We have no dust. And kind of blink to a bad position. Ends up being an okay team fight for you guys, honestly. Lots of little mistakes. But it's an okay team fight. So here, you stack your stuns, right? Like, you should know how long the duration is for Aftershock, and you should be counting in your head, like, sort of as you're making those stuns. It didn't end up mattering in terms of killing the Tusk, but it might have ended up mattering for killing the Push, right? So, like, you have time to enchant, hit, fissure, hit, Echo Slam, hit, right? All of that can happen, and that's the duration of those things. Whereas here, you just stacked. And maybe you are trying to stop this, but again, it's kind of like a panic Echo Slam, right? You don't necessarily need to use the Echo Slam to kill this Tusk, right? You're just using it for damage at this point. You're not using it for a stun. And that's, I think, a misplay on your part. Then here, right, you realize you're going to get flanked from the top, right? Pudge 4 steps away and he's invis. You guys have no detection, so this CM is likely dead. This is where all 4 of you just retreat south, right? She doesn't do it fast enough because she's trying to chase the Puzz, who's invis that they have no detection for. So this is just really dumb. But you guys end up retreating the right way. And like here, at this point, you're kind of waiting on your fissure cooldown, which is completely understandable. Like, create space while your spells are on cooldown. Then here, again, you're trying to chase the Pudge when there's two heroes sitting in front of your Shadow Fiend, right? This is just, you're blinking after someone you can't catch. There's no reason to. Like, just stun the guys that you're standing right on top of, right? If you enchant Totem here and then you fissure both of them, maybe SF can kill both of them, right? It's just bad target selection. You end up fissuring them, but you fissure them like 4 or 5 seconds later, or not 4 or 5. It's like a second and a half, 2 seconds later than you should have, which means that this SF has taken half of his HP and damage, rather than only taking maybe a third or a quarter or less, is what I'm trying to say. Bottom comes up, you walk up, this is nice, you walk up, you enchant the bottom. SF gets enough damage out that it allows you to kill that guy, but Dusa is still there. So, like, losing fight for you guys, you lose basically your safe lane farmer and your mid. Alk decides to re-go without his ultimate. It's okay. Maybe you could have caught him. Who were you looking to kill there? Dusa? Maybe. Like, when you're deciding to kill this Dusa, I want you to click her mana. There are certain heroes in Dota where clicking their mana pool is actually really informative as to whether or not you can kill them. Dusa is one, Storm is one, Blink heroes can be one, so like Anti-Mage and Quap can be one. Most of the time they're going to have mana for their Blink, but if you have like a mana burning sort of team, like a Quas, Wex, Invoker, sometimes those heroes won't have enough mana for Blink. Other heroes like Wraith King is one. I can keep going down the list. But if you click her and she has full mana, she's actually unkillable for you guys. But if she has no mana, then she's killable. So I'd like to see you clicking and looking. Here, you just missed the fissure. That's going to happen. You just misclicked. So maybe you could have killed her. But you're making these decisions sort of on bad information. And I think that's kind of like the majority of what's happening in this game, right? You're making decisions off of bad information because you don't have good vision, you don't have good wards, you aren't anticipating what's going to happen in the fight, and you're reacting. And reactive Dota is losing Dota most of the time. Unless you're playing a team that is specifically designed to react and win that way. Right? Like if you've got like a Spectre who's like farming the jungle and is safe farming the jungle, and reacts with the haunt and wins that way, right? You can build a team around playing that playstyle, but I just don't think that your team fits that playstyle this game. I mean, you're the only hero that fits that playstyle, right? You're the only counter initiator. Like, if you had more counter initiation on your team, then maybe it's okay to play this way. But it's definitely not okay to have, like, this amount of vision for the duration of this game. Like, I would just sell this bottle. It's, like, no utility for you. And I would buy a gem. I would buy swords, sentries, glimmer cape, like anything. So here, again, like you're kind of running around randomly. Guess you were worried about SF there. I think that's okay. But Pudge gets a kill on the CM. You've got Blink Force Staff. You could have initiated on that faster, because you could just force yourself into a blink, into a stun. That's like the big advantage behind picking up a Force Staff, is that your range of initiation essentially becomes like from here to here in like a second. You can essentially fissure a target like maybe out here. Trying to think, because Force will take you to like here, and then you could blink to like here. Alright, so maybe your range of initiation is more like this. But that's still really long. That's like 2 screens worth of initiation. It might be over aggressive, and maybe that's what you're thinking, but it's tough to say. But again, like now the fighting with less heroes is sort of started, right? They've picked off one, now they're going to try and push mid because there's one hero dead, and they're just basically saying take a 4v5 versus us right now, and we like our odds. And so what you need to do as a team is you need to defend in such a way that your team doesn't fight, rather than like fighting and getting arrowed and then forcing CM to defend. Right? This is an opportunity as an Earthshaker when you're defending a Rax like this. Like just blink up here, fissure off the path so they can't walk up. You know? Like delay the push and force yourself out. Stay safe until you're ready to fight, rather than taking the fight on their terms. Here, your fissure misses the Pudge. You end up echo slamming a Pudge only by himself, so your blink was a bit in a bad position. Potom does a lot of damage to you. But your team kind of ends up winning this fight, which is good. Nice Force Staff. Storestorm kills you. And she's going to get away because of the invis. Nope. Alright, let's watch this again. So, fight starts, your SF gets arrowed. It's pretty bad. So, you fissure, and you end up fissuring. You only hit the Disruptor. So that was the only hero you hit. Maybe you delayed his ult, which is kind of okay. But this fissure is just mispositioned. And if you're having difficulty clicking on like the targets that you need to click on, like go to a website and practice it. Right? I have a website bookmarked. Let's see. Like there are websites devoted to click accuracy and improving your click accuracy. And there's tons of them. There's like 3, you know, like if you Google any of them, you can find any Flash game that sort of fits that profile. I have one in particular that I like. But if you're having issues clicking the right targets, that's like what you want to play. Like 5 minutes a day, just playing click accuracy games, and you'd be amazed how much more accurate your clicks will be. And it'll help you for playing these sort of skill shot based heroes, which are like Earthshaker. Like you got to blink to the right position. Here, like you blink to an okay position. And again, these are just like little mistakes, right? Like if you're able to fissure the Pudge, right? Because you weren't even trying to hit this guy. Right, you were trying to hit the Pudge, you just missed, and it just ended up hitting this guy because you forced in. Right, if you're able to hit this Pudge and this Potom maybe, then he's able to BKB Requiem a little bit earlier, and then instead of blinking to here, you blink to here, right, to hit both Potom and the Pudge. Right, you're decreasing a lot of the damage. She still gets hit by the echo damage, because the echo damage is actually pretty huge, but she's not getting hit by the aftershock stun. So they're like small positioning mistakes. And he's at half HP already before he's able to get his BKB off. Like that's really bad. And is likely going to end up with him dying. It doesn't for some reason because Potom changes targets to you, even though all your spells are on cooldown. She could have killed the SF. She decided not to though. It's a good tower defense. It's a good defense by your team in the sense that you won it. But there are a lot of little ways that you could have played the fight better. I'm just going to fast forward a bit, because these guys are going to be dead forever, and you guys are going to farm for 60 seconds. Like, here's where you take Roche, right? But he's worried about dying, he's low HP, you want to push out the waves. Right, like, Roche is sitting here. 43 minutes, Roche is sitting here. It's never been touched, never been tried. Like, that's really bad. Roche is like one of the easiest ways to win the game. And if you don't believe me, then pick Ursa and go Roche at 9 minutes, and then at 18 minutes, and then at 27 minutes, and watch how many games you win just by picking off Roche. You'd be amazed. Alright, so everybody's back alive. You didn't accomplish anything with your big team fight win. You're probably just happy that you won the team fight and you defended your base. And that's cool. That's good. But again, we're back to the same situation. You've got defensive wards now, which is nice. They have a lot of overlap, though. So, like, if they aren't in this jungle, like, they can still be somewhere. And when they all revive, if they lose a team fight trying to push your base, like, their likely objective they're going to take is likely Roche. So you guys had the opportunity to take it, but you didn't. And now there's going to be a big fight down here, basically because of it. Here, that was a nice echo. They're really well positioned for echo there. So it's really hard for you to get a good echo there. I think here, instead of echoing, like SF gets hooked, which sucks. But I think I just would have fissured there instead of echoing. Maybe you felt the need to echo because he's your SF and he's how you win your game. You got frozen, that's why you couldn't force staff. Okay. But like you guys are just separated down there. And it's a nice play by Pudge why the SF dies. But again, like your echo in that situation, like it's not going to get a kill. And it's not going to save your SF, so why use it? Just fissure instead. Like you never even got your fissure off. If you just fissure all three of them, then maybe SF's able to live and do damage. Right? Fissure into blink, enchant, into echo if you need it. If you're not sure about using it. But now, like you buy back, you don't have echo to defend the tower. It's really hard to use long cooldown spells because you never know for sure whether or not it was the right time to use it until after you've used it. And that makes them really hard to play. One game, I got a solo pick off against an Ember Spirit. It was like 45 minutes. I was playing Earthshaker as well. And I got a solo pick off versus an Ember Spirit at like 45 minutes. Ember is like their hard carry. But I used Echo to do it, right? I blink, Echo slammed him, used my combo, and I had an SF on my team that game too. And we ended up killing the Ember. And he just instantly bought back and they took our Rex bottom because I had no Echo. You know? Like, good players will play around those cooldowns. And so you have to be careful about how you use them. Here you guys buy back, and it ends up defending your base. They don't continue pushing. And I sort of like your movements. A lot of what people do in this kind of late game is they split up and do their own thing and try to farm. And then one person gets picked off, and usually the team that has the better pick off is the team that wins at this stage because they pick off the guy who's like solo farming. But this is good. This is like how upper level teams play, which is one guy pushes the lane, one guy farms the jungle, and then the three supports are just chilling in the jungle out of vision of everything. Like here, this is good. You're sitting in the right position, you're not doing anything. They decide to go mid, and you guys have no TPs. So late game decision making, you gotta have TPs. Because you're gonna lose a lane of Rex basically on the fact that 3 of your heroes don't have TPs. And this is something you like probably recognize during the game. Fine Echo. Force staff away. Nope. So you purchased this force staff, but you really haven't used it at all this game. SF dies, that's really bad. But Legion gets a nice kill. These guys are trying to fight instead of hitting buildings. I don't... It's a mistake on their part. Alk should be buying back, probably. Maybe not. I mean, this lane's lost. If they go for top racks, Alk should buy back, but... So, like, when I'm watching this game, there are lots of mistakes on both sides. And I've been focusing a lot on your mistakes, and I think I've been pretty critical of you this game. Don't take it personally. Like, you're a pretty good Dota player, honestly. Your MMR is pretty high, you're above average in a lot of different ways. And I'm trying to make this video to sort of help you learn to be a better player. But if we're sort of to take like a summary of what happened this game, right, the summary is, in the first 18 minutes you accomplished essentially, we'll say 5 things. You stacked the camp 3 times. So that's like 3 things. You got a kill at the 0-minute rune, and you got a really nice blink echo slam for kills at 18 minutes. And you secured 2 runes kind of in the middle there. But mostly you just had 2 deaths, and so those kind of like cancel each other out, I think. So what I'd like to see you doing as a roaming Earthshaker is be a little bit more active on the map, and if you can't be active on the map, then maximize your own farm by pulling. And a lot of that comes to anticipating what to do on the clock, right? Like there's this thing I like to call scripting, which is basically as an Earthshaker, you should know what you need to do in a game for the first like 5 to 6 minutes without even playing the game, right? As an Earthshaker supporting an SF, right? You want to be there for the rune fight at 0 minutes. You want to stack at 1 minute. You want to think about rotating to the top lane, or you want to think about ganking the mid lane at 1:30. Most of the time, as an Earthshaker, you kind of want to let SF get his experience until he has his raises, and then you kind of roam to his lane. You don't start there. If you're a Winter Wyvern, who is someone who can zone the mid laner, you can start there. And that's just something you'll kind of learn as you play more. Other things I want you to work on are like being a little bit more precise in your clicks and being a little bit more precise in your movements, right? The big thing I talked about is get to a good position and stay there, right? Don't move around for no reason whatsoever, right? Just move to a position, stay there. You don't need your APMs to be high to be a good Dota player. Like my APM is consistently like 150, which is really, really low, but I can still play with, you know, some of the best players out there. If you're on a micro hero, it's a little different, but on an Earthshaker, you want every movement you make to matter. Other things with your movements, being a little bit more precise with your clicks, right? Blinking to better positions. With your echo slams, being a little bit more precise about clicking, being a little bit more precise about your usage of your spells, right? Not stacking your stuns, not stacking your aftershocks, not wasting your echoes, not panic echoing, because that's pretty bad in a lot of situations. But overall, I think that's it. I hope there were a lot of other little tips in there for you too. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have feedback for me. If anyone else is looking to get a replay reviewed, look at the Reddit thread that I link in the description of this video, and just submit something there, and I'll respond. You can also submit a replay to me over YouTube, whatever works best for you. And I think that's it, so thanks.